Hi there, this is Sarah Connolly, one of the coaches in the Alcohol Free Lifestyle Program. And in this episode, we have a wonderful guest, Linda Basso, who is joining us to share a little bit about her experience in the Project 90 program. So we're really excited to have Linda with us here today. Linda, would you be willing to do just a quick intro about yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, Sarah. I'm glad to be here. I'm Linda
Thank you.
Basso. I'm 52. I live in Northern California. I'm a business coach. Have three kids, a wide range of ages from 2.5 up to 22. So
Wow,
I'm busy.
you are busy. Gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's a lot. 2.5 to 22. And how old is the middle one?
9, almost
No.
10. She'll be 10 in a few weeks here. So very
Gosh.
different stages of life, getting to
Yeah.
do all the parts, but it's fascinating to be an older parent, and things that really stressed me out about the 22-year-old when he was 2. Now the 2-year-old is doing his thing, and I'm like, right, yeah, that you do that.
Yeah.
It's much easier.
Yes, it's a totally different experience with I mean, even with the second child, isn't it?
Yes.
Um, the first child minded, got wrapped in cotton wool for quite a while. And the
Yeah.
second child was eating dirt before I could even look about it.
Yeah, and the third one, you hope you don't like forget them somewhere.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yes, parenting is definitely one of our greatest teachers, I think.
Yes.
So tell us, Linda, you joined Project 90 back in February of this year. And I wonder if you could tell us what life was like for you before you joined, and what was it that kind of inspired you to make that final commitment?
So I was what was considered a, I guess, socially acceptable drinker, if you will. I mean, in some circles, I would fit the norm of what people drank. 2 or 3 glasses when you were out or whatever. And I grew up in that way, right? So I'm from Michigan, and the Midwest culture is very much surrounded or centered on alcohol, or at least the part that I grew up in was. And so I was drinking daily, actually. Like, I think I obviously pregnancies, I would take the time off there, and breastfeeding and that kind of thing. But like, I really started drinking quite young. When you're growing up in Michigan, you go to football games on the weekends, so as a high school student, even maybe in late junior high, we started drinking. That was when you drank on the weekends, right? And you drank at the tailgate parties, and you drank, then you go to college and you start drinking. And just like, it's just in my circles, was a very acceptable way of blowing off steam, of celebrating, of dealing with stress, of dealing with being a parent. Like, what parent doesn't want to be like, my day is done, give me my wine, right?
Yeah, totally get that.
Yeah. So I mean, on some level, but there was a day, it was a few years ago now, there was a day I walked into my doctor's office, and there was a hanging sign, and it said, the recommended amount of alcohol for men is 2 drinks per day. For women, it's 1 drink per day. So if you exceed this, you can, and it was brief, it wasn't, but it was kind of eye-opening. Like, I think prior to that, it had been 2 drinks for women, and 3 drinks for men or something. There was a shift in policy. And I saw that sign, and I realized, oh, 7 drinks a week, I'm doing 14, right? Because I'm having my 2 glasses of wine every day. And so even though there wasn't, I'm not going to say there weren't repercussions, but there weren't big repercussions. Like, so none of the AA stuff spoke to me. I thought, my gosh, I'm not having any of those issues. Like, I don't resonate or relate to anything about that world or those stories coming out of there. But when I saw that sign, I thought, twice the recommended limit, 2 times, not like a couple drinks over, like I'm doing twice. And then so I started thinking about that, and that took me a year or 2 to kind of like, keep doing that and pondering it and thinking, I really probably ought to reduce. And then I kind of looked around and realized, not all my friends are having 2 glasses of wine every day, right? They're not. That's where I came from, but that's actually not what's happening around me. And we live in Northern California now, in a really cute little rural town, and it's very clean living, very, we buy our food from the farm, everything's organic. Like on some level, I do supplements. I mean, on some level, it's like kind of shocking that I was drinking that much, right? Because on all other aspects, I'm like Ms. Health, right? And I check all the boxes for all the like right kind of living, farm to table lifestyle. But the farm to table lifestyle actually includes wine, right? But apparently it just includes one glass of wine. And so that stuck with me for a while. And then I started noticing, sometimes the 2 drinks I wanted third, or I would have a third, right? So now I'm like, okay, so now you're heading towards 3 times the limit. Like this is insane. Like, and at the same time, I was watching my father get older and my brother, and like they drink a lot. And, and again, they still kind of move through like what's considered socially acceptable around them, but they drink a lot, right? And so I was like, wow, between where I am and where they are, it's the space is getting smaller.
Yeah.
And so I was longing for something to shift, even though I wasn't, like I said, having anything that I was like, it wasn't like I was waking up hungover, or I wasn't throwing, I wasn't, no big things were occurring. I was never dry. I had gotten it so that it was like only after dinner. It wasn't even after dinner, it was after the kids were in bed. I never drank around the kids. I never, it was like the kids were in bed. It's time to sit down with my Netflix, my cheese, and my wine, right? It was my deserved, time off to chill.
Yeah.
So when I saw a friend, a colleague who I trust and respect, he had put a post about your program and your study. And I thought, wow, Lynn, like this is being handed to you on a, it's sort of like dangling, like, hello. Really, if nothing else, I should have a call with these folks, right? So, and that's how I ended up joining your program, thankfully.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think it's such an important point that you raised, that it doesn't have to be the stereotypical idea of an alcohol problem. Yeah. Like we don't have to be rolling in the gutter with a brown paper bag. It is, as you rightly point out, these guidelines for what we are. I don't even like to use the word recommended. I don't know what word they actually use, but 1 glass of wine a day, 7 days a week, changes our brains. We know this now, and yet even that's still on posters and gives people that ability to continue with a sense of denial that it's still okay. It's still okay. And you're kind of talking through, I think, what many people will relate to, which is how we rationalize. We have the rules. Well, I'm fine because I only drink after the kids go to bed, and I'm fine. So I really appreciate you sharing that so articulately, because I really believe a lot of people are in that space but feel like they're not bad enough to get help.
Yeah, and I think, in your world, it's common knowledge that it changes your brain, or it changed. Like I say that nothing bad was happening, but it was. I just didn't recognize it. So after stopping, and like the way I sleep now is like 10,000 times better. And I didn't know I was having a sleeping problem, right? I didn't know I was having a sleeping issue. I would wake up sometimes in the middle of the night and not be able to go back to sleep, or I'd be too warm, right? Like there were hormonal things happening. I have a thyroid issue now. Like things were happening, but I was just attributing them to, oh, that's what happens after you have the child, child number 2, or that's what happens when, but absolutely everything that I've experienced in my life, health-wise or whatever, was being exaggerated by that use of alcohol. And then things that I wasn't getting, like really good deep sleep, weren't happening, right? And I was depleting, various vitamins and minerals and different things, right? And I was altering my brain chemistry. So I just didn't see in my face. I mean, like the quality difference in my skin is astounding, right? You had us all take that picture in the beginning, and then you saw it. Every week we're on with our group, and you start thinking, wow, she's really beautiful. Wow, he looks amazing. Not like they looked bad when they joined, but just you can see the transformation. So clearly my body was struggling. I just wasn't noticing those subtle things.
Yeah, I think that's the exact word. It's subtle things that we don't realize. And in the space of what we call gray area drinkers, which is the space between, alcoholism at its worst and someone that can every now and again have a drink. The gray area is really, really big. And most people sit in that gray area. And in that gray area, it is subtle, or it can be subtle. I guess the more we talk about this, the more we get educated, the more people will realize that. But what's interesting also, and this is the question, when you saw people transform in the group, did you also see a transformation in how they were being? Obviously, how they were looking was changing, but how they were being.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm a coach, so I'm used to going really deep with people. So I think I heard self-reported changes, right? So people, and that was a part of the program that was a challenge for me, right? Because I think for whatever reason, my gains weren't so big in the beginning. Again, subtle shifts were happening, and over the arc of the 90 days or whatever we're at now, 100 and some days, like a lot has changed, but it was changing subtly. Some people were having these enormous wins, they're like, I have so much energy. And like, one guy started running a marathon, and like, people were doing like this incredible stuff. And I was like, hey, like I'm not I'm not having these big changes. Like, what's wrong with me? Why do they get all the energy and all I get is this, like, okay, I think I'm sleeping better. So yeah, I mean, obviously people were reporting, huge amounts of energy increases. And I think, some parts of the group were the alcohol. I mean, I definitely had a dependent relationship with alcohol, right? So I was in that area. I mean, I had read about it before. I knew my relationship with alcohol, like I was being dictated to by alcohol, but I had kept it in a short enough space that like those hours didn't change. Now I just drink my, I do cherry juice mixed with sparkling water with lime, I mean, but my behavior didn't change in those 2 hours. That's my relaxing time. Other people, if they've been drinking all day, maybe a whole weekend kind, maybe they're day drinking. And so then hours were going by, they gained tons of time back, right? So much so that sometimes they're like, I don't know what to do with myself today. And I thought, gosh, I've never, I wish I had a day I didn't know what to do with myself. I'm busy. That sounds great. But it was stressful for them, So yeah, I did see big changes for folks.
Yeah. So when you signed up and joined the program, what was your expectation? Or were you just kind of, I'm just going to see what happens here?
Well, my expectation was that I was going to somehow possibly not drink for 90 days, right? Which sounded like a complete, fallacy, like completely not possible. Just, I was like, whatever, this is my best shot at doing it, is what I thought. This is my best shot at doing it. I've never gone 90 days. I mean, maybe my first pregnancy, I went 90 days. I did the whole 9 months, but my second pregnancy, I was like, the doctor said I can have a glass of wine. So maybe once a week or something, I would have a half a glass or something, So even and then my third pregnancy, same thing. Like, if I want to have a glass, I'll have a glass. Like, so I was way under the recommended limits, but I was still in relationship with alcohol, right? So now this idea that I would literally not be in relationship with alcohol was inconceivable, given my family history and the culture I grew up in, the way I had been using it. It's inconceivable that I would truly be able to go 90 days without it. So I had this expectation that possibly maybe I could do that.
Wow. And that kind of brings me a question up for me is, had you ever tried before to give up alcohol?
I would tell myself often too, and like coming off of the pregnancy, I breastfed for a year or so, so I would be I would say I was more like, I never tried to quit. I tried to manage it. I was always trying very hard to manage it because I knew I was past the levels. I knew it wasn't that great, but I knew it gave me some good things too, or, in my mind, some good things. Like, so I just spent a lot of time trying to manage the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be exhausting, can't it? That when you remove alcohol and you actually realize how much mental energy is expended on managing the consumption, it's quite amazing. I feel like I have spent a lot of my precious mental energy negotiating how I interact with this substance.
Well, and then, I mean, then you go through the program and you learn, it's on the chart with meth and heroin and cocaine, and you know, and you're looking at the brain changes and you're like, yeah, I don't have any problem saying no to those things, right? Like that's I
Yeah.
don't have to manage any relationship with heroin. Thank you. Like I
Yes.
just not a thing in my world, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was kind of like eye-opening of like, why would I be managing anything with this substance, right? Like why would
Yeah.
I do that? Like it's so bizarre that I was actually managing a relationship with this substance. And there it is on the list with these three other things that I just they
Yeah.
don't play into my world.
They and this is the thing, because they hold no value, right? But because alcohol is so, promoted and glorified, and like you say, we grow up and it's everywhere, it holds a lot of value for a lot of people.
Mhm.
And when we hold something in value, it's really, really hard to remove that. But if someone put heroin in front of me, it has no value for me
No.
whatsoever. And I feel no trouble not doing it. Whereas if somebody that was addicted to heroin, that product has a massively high value for them
Mhm.
because of the result that they get from it. And this is, I think, is the really big problem with alcohol, is that we as a society give it value everywhere on the TV, in the movies, in the advertising, in our homes. It's as you mentioned earlier, it's everywhere for a lot of people, which is, I guess, one of the deterrents. So when you say that it was a big part of your family, how did you navigate relationships as you were removing alcohol? How did you navigate relationships with people who were still actively drinking?
Yes, luckily I didn't have to. So as I mentioned, we live in rural Northern California, and all of our friends, like I said, they're pretty healthy too. So actually, I was probably drinking the most out of like our whole group. So I didn't, I remember being at a friend's birthday party, and it was an outdoor restaurant, and everybody was, having their one drink or their two drinks or whatever they would have, but nobody even noticed that I wasn't drinking, right? Like, so it just didn't even come up. And I thought, wow, that's so great, because I wasn't sure I could do the James version of like, hey, no, well, just carry on. It's fun. Like I don't think I could have quite that reaction to it, or I wasn't confident of my ability to do that. So for me, it was great to I just didn't order it, right? I just didn't order it. Nobody commented on it. I just drank my fizzy water and on we went. I did have a weekend where my dad came. It was near the end of the program. So that was lucky for me that by then it wasn't a problem for me not to drink.
Yeah.
But I did like, so I made a conscious choice actually. And I think I remember sharing this in the group that it's such a big part of his world, and it's such a coping mechanism for him. And it's not my place to, like, I would never want to bring up uncomfortable. It's not my job to point out to him anything, right? Like, just to care about him and care about our relationship. And I understand, I've done enough. I have had to do so much self-growth and trauma healing work in this time in order not to drink, that I get why he drinks, right? I know his story. I know why he's drinking. He's actually, and all things considered, he's managing amazingly well. So that I just didn't confront it. I just didn't anything, right? Like I just left it alone. And I still had and I still do. I really enjoy wine glasses, right? So I have these Rydell glasses. They have really thin edge. I like them. So I have my cherry juice with my sparkling water in a wine glass. I did that before he came, and I did it when he was here, but I just did that in the kitchen. And then I had my glass of like red stuff too, right? Or I could do sparkling apple juice with sparkling water, and that looks like Chardonnay, right? I just decided to avoid the conversation with them, because they're doing their thing, and they're actually, they're enjoying their life, and they're dealing the best they can with whatever happened to them. And it's not my place to do anything about that. So I just avoided the whole thing, honestly.
Yeah, but I think that it was avoided consciously, as
Mhm.
opposed to, it
Yeah.
was a conscious decision based on your beliefs and the feelings that you have for your parents. And I think that's also a really important point, is that we're not here to change everybody. We're just here to focus on ourselves and to, become the version of ourselves that we're most proud and comfortable with,
Mhm.
and not to try and evangelize to others, because, as you say, everybody has a purpose for using the substance, um, any substance, drugs or alcohol, um, to potentially deal with some really, really difficult stuff.
Yeah, or workaholism, or, it doesn't have to be a substance. But when you were saying we hold value, I don't find alcohol valuable, but the benefits or the state it put me in was valuable to me at that time, right? So whatever we do to cope, denial, avoiding certain relationships, needing people too much, working too hard, giving too much, we have all kinds of behaviors that at the core, they are trying to meet a need that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And those needs have to be met one way or another, right?
Yeah.
And if we're using, what we call a low quality way of meeting the need is still being met. And that the journey is to find a high quality, or at least a neutral way of meeting a fundamental human need. And I could talk about this all day, but so my next question is, when you were in the program, briefly, what was your experience like when you joined and you met the other people in the program?
It was fine, like I've done enough growth work and had to be part of groups but they're not my favorite, right? So definitely like joining, and this idea that I was going to like be on Marco Polo every day or 4 times a week, I was like, this is really hard. I don't want to do this, like this isn't my thing. And I didn't think it would be very supportive, but it actually turned out to be hugely supportive, right? Like with my schedule, I could only do 1 meeting per week. So that meeting was super valuable to me. Always popped some insights, or, like I would have growth and movement, but I wasn't using the meetings as a way to like, relieve the pressure I felt, right? But Marco Polo was doing that. Like I thought I made this commitment to this group of people, and I had this like real desire not to have to come to that group and say, I had a drink, right? So that accountability, I guess, or that camaraderie. And then hearing some people that it was harder for them than it was for me, and that some people it was easier for them than it was for me. And like just having this range of experiences was super normalizing, super, and we emerged with a core group of people who's still in touch, right? Like, so, we have a call scheduled this Thursday, right? So, like it's a group of people they really care about each other. And I definitely saw relationships developing in the group, people saying, like, I love you guys. Like, I don't even know, I've never even met you, but like, I really feel close to this group. And I think that's really sweet.
Yeah, it's definitely that shared experience and vulnerability that creates a really beautiful, deep connection. And we see it often that, Project 90 members will have friends for life, that they create these connections where, because they've been vulnerable and they've been able to be who they really are, which we, let's face it, do not get a chance to do very often in the real world. We don't get a chance to speak from the heart and share our vulnerabilities. Creates really amazing connections with other human beings, and it's just a wonderful thing. To have, like you say, is accountability. Like, we don't want to let people down. We'd rather not let people down than let ourselves down.
Right. Yeah, when you say, had I ever tried to stop before, I used to say, like, let's take a break, or I would, I went to like every other day, or I was doing all this stuff to like to try to reduce my intake, but it was too easy to talk myself out of it. Right? That night I was like, well, but I'll switch it around, and the day off will be tomorrow. Or like, it was just too easy to like, the part of me that really wanted that reward, or that whatever it was, whatever I was getting from it, could trump the part of me that thought, maybe we shouldn't, and like this program, I think, strengthened the part that's like, dude, why would you want to do that? Like, this, and this about it now. And you have this, demonstrated experience that tons of people are not drinking. So, it's easier to do it with a group of people. It's not that didn't want to disappoint them, but it was like, somehow, like, I promised, like I committed to this group of people to do this thing. So just do it, just hang in there and do it. Right. Yeah. Same maybe as going to a trainer at a gym or something. Like, you have the appointment, you're like, if you don't have the appointment with the trainer, you might not go to the gym. You might find like 5 other excuses. But if you have the appointment with the trainer, you're going to go. Because like, are you going to not show up? Like, you made a commitment.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me with, you were in the program for 90 days. Can you recall a point at which you felt, okay, I really feel confident now about not drinking?
I think month 3, like by the time you hit 60 days or, somewhere around there, it stopped. It wasn't like I was trying not to. It just had become normal to have my, I think at that time I was trying different fizzy waters and I was doing a sparkling apple juice mixed with sparkling water and just trying different things. And it just became normal that it was like my evenings had reworked themselves. Right. So there just wasn't, what that didn't come up anymore. And I didn't ever in the morning think, there was a moment where I was like, so it used to be in the mornings, I would think, oh, I can't wait for the wine and my show and my book. And like, I would anticipate, because I have really stressful days, right? So there was always a moment in the morning where I was like anticipating my lovely downtime in the evening. And there was this moment where I had that thought, but it was about reading my book and watching the Netflix show. Like it didn't include the wine in the thought, right? So, wow, cool. Like I did it. Like it shifted, right? And so it just somewhere along the way, I don't know exactly when, but somewhere along the way, the grip that it had stopped gripping, and I just don't have that relationship anymore, right? Like that went away, and in its place is nothing. Like it's not like a replacement. It's not like, can't wait to have that cherry juice, and like that doesn't have a whole lot,
Yeah.
it just isn't there. There is no grip. There's nothing gripping me about alcohol.
You're not going to run out at midnight to get cherry juice.
No.
No. So with the program, obviously there's the group, there's the Marco Polo, there's the cause. What, if you can, say one or two things that you feel made the most difference to you? Whether it was a new habit or a new way of thinking.
Yeah, I don't know that there was a most, right? Like I think like most of life, there's just like a ton of small variables that when you put them all together are very powerful. And it's kind of good, because if any one of them fell away, you'd probably still make it, like getting the education about the science and what was happening. And that was super crucial, right? That like turned on the intellect part of this discovery. The being with the group was like really like the community aspect, right? I would have liked even more information, right? I could have digested more. Oh, those little videos we watched, right? That was like kind of like, different interviews with people and different ways of thinking about. That was super powerful. So I felt like I was learning, and it was coming in on a bunch of different levels. And then I was also doing, like I mentioned, some really deep trauma healing work and personal growth work. So I was kind of also, shoveling out old triggers and taking away those underlying reasons. I probably would have kept drinking even if I'd done that work, because it was just habitual. But
Yeah.
at some point, I wouldn't have needed to drink to cover those up anymore, right? So this was kind of happening at the same time. Like I wasn't drinking, that wasn't part of it, and I was removing the underlying stuff that was there that sort of caused the drinking in the first place. So I was, like when my dad was here, I didn't get triggered once by his behavior or any old family dynamic, right? Like, because I had just been shoveling that for the last 2 months before he got there, right? So
Yeah.
I think just, so all of that added together was super important. So if, I think it's a good thing to point out that it doesn't matter where you start with any one of those things, right? Like don't wait for your one thing. Oh, if I could just find this one thing, then I would be able to stop drinking. Like just start with any one of those things, promising to a community, joining a program, getting the science, whatever. Like just start with one of those avenues, because any one of those cracks are going to add up over time and contribute to you not to having an alcohol-free lifestyle, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice, because there's so much out there now, there's so much information, and you can get overwhelmed. And when we get overwhelmed, we get very good at making excuses not to do things. And so I think it's really good advice that you just got to start somewhere, and give yourself an opportunity to, like you say, open one of the cracks and start to see what's possible in a curious manner, as opposed to this kind of, I must have this one thing that's going to fix me, because as we all know, there is not just one thing. It's a whole host of different things.
Yeah, I think your program also, I want to say that was something that was powerful. Y'all are very laid back about this, right? Like that gentle, like, oh, well, let's just see how it goes. And well, I wonder about that. Or, you're just very, there was no dogma. There was no like, it's like this. There wasn't a lot of preachiness. Like, so that, like I said, the AA stuff, very hard for me to digest or relate to. You all were very easy to relate to, right? Like you weren't making a huge deal out of it. It was like, obviously there was a theme of being alcohol free, but it was just as likely to be talked about in a celebratory way as it was a curious way, as it was an inquiry way, as it was anything. Like it was, y'all were just very relaxed about it. And I think that was powerful too, for letting us, be disoriented, get reoriented, figure things out. Like there's something about that loose holding of it that I think is a magical part of the program.
Yeah, thank you for raising that. I've never actually given that much consideration. I think it's just the way that we all are. I guess we've all come together because of that approach, and a deep understanding that this is just part of being human. One naughty little niggly little part, and that when we take away all this darkness and judgment and shame around behaviors that we fall into, for often through no fault of our own, I know for myself, once I got rid of the shame and the judgment about myself, it was like, oh, okay, I can just be curious about this and really be kind to myself about this. So I'm glad to hear that was your experience. So thank you for sharing that. So now you've been over 90 days alcohol free. Yay! What do you feel has, obviously you've talked about sleep as a benefit, and skin, and just a general feeling of well-being. Is there any other benefits that you've noticed as a result of not having this daily 2 glasses of wine a night habit?
Yeah, that there was probably the biggest thing actually is this lack of anxiety, right? So I have a super stressful job. I've been growing my business intensely for the past 2 years. I'm like, that's why I could only do the one meeting. Like I took this on, like knowing I need to do this, and I should not be doing this right now, right? Like I don't have the space in my world for this. So I had a like ongoing anxiety-based, stress-based approach to my work life, that the amount of that decreased a ton, right? Like just a ton. I still have the same, and actually now it's starting to nod, and some staff are coming on board. So some things are starting to blossom in a way, but I was very much in our time together, still, hoeing the ground and planting, like doing all the things and frustrated often. But it went from being like that constant anxiety, like this isn't going to work. Oh my God, things are going to fall apart. Like the kind of catastrophizing that can happen, which then of course makes you really need that glass of wine. Like, it's like a self-fulfilling vicious cycle, I guess, right? That conversation went away. I still have, it's a stressful, no doubt about it, that my work life is high intensity, high stress, but it's just that, right? Like it's very clear. Anyone can see it. We've all arranged our personal life and, set up the kids and manage the household in a way, knowing Linda's in this really intense period, right? This is the way that this part of business growth happens. End of story. It's not rocket science, but it's not catastrophe either. It's just this, right? Yeah. So there's like a much more realistic reaction and approach to what's happening. It is happening, right? Like this is what is. I was just telling myself that it was like all this other stuff, right? I was adding, what do we say? Pain is inevitable, but suffering's optional, right? A lot of optional suffering happening.
Yeah. And perspective. I think, that's the one of the really beautiful things about removing alcohol is you suddenly get perspective. Well, not suddenly, but eventually you get perspective on life, and you're not looking at it through this small lens where everything is one way. And like you say, catastrophizing and stressing and adding in the lack of sleep. And you're just on this constant adrenaline cycle or roller coaster, up, down, which is exhausting.
It is. Yeah.
So, Linda, what now for you? You've come out the 90 days and you've got a lovely support group in place with your fellow pod members. Are you planning to continue? I mean, this is a silly question, really, but are you planning to continue your alcohol-free journey?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I don't have plans. Like in some sense, I was so grateful when the program ended to just like stop putting so much attention on it, stop thinking about it, stop deciding if I was or wasn't, right? So I'm more in the mode of just being as healthy as I can be and being as present as I can be and doing the work that I need to do. And I don't know what relationship I'll have, if any, with alcohol, right? Like, so that's what I got, was like, I wasn't necessarily trying to be alcohol free. I was trying to be free from alcohol. And I feel like I have that now. And if that ever starts to slip away, I will take steps to go back to feeling free from alcohol. So like, that's the lack of relationship I have with it. Like, I don't know if I'll ever have a drink or not. I don't know if I'll have a sip of something. I don't know, but I'm not thinking about it. I'm not in relationship with that. I'm not trying to manage that anymore. It's just like, it's not part of my life. We'll see, I don't know. I don't know. It's like, that's like answering a question about many things in your life. It's kind of like, well, I don't know. I don't know what would happen if that, so in my case, I needed to just like take a break from that intensity around it and just be in the like, congrats, let's celebrate where we are, enjoy this. And then, I mean, I'm guessing that'll just keep going. I don't have a relationship with it anymore. And I don't know if it comes up at some point, if I will or I won't. And I'm not gonna get into like a power struggle about that, or, just gonna like, just take it day by day and see.
One day at a time.
Yeah. And enjoy my sleep. I'm just gonna keep enjoying my sleep.
How good is good sleep? Oh,
amazing.
It's actually a game changer, I think. I mean, it really is when you get good sleep. And as we all know, that alcohol does not do anything for our sleep.
Yeah.
Well, Linda, I'm so grateful that you've taken the time to join us today. One last question. If we have somebody listening who relates to your story, what words of encouragement would you give them if they're feeling anxiety or stressed about their drinking and they don't know where to turn?
Well, I from my perspective, if you think you're drinking too much, you're drinking too much, right? Like, so if you've had that thought, just stop being in that, like, am I, aren't I, well, compared to, and doing the distraction technique while you just keep drinking, wondering if you think you are, you probably are. So just take any step toward resolving that, join this program, go, start taking days off, whatever version. I feel like once you make that decision, like, I would like to do something about this, that's when my friend's post popped up for me, right? So just if you're willing to do the work or willing to make a change, if you're open to making change, so instead of thinking, am I drinking too much? Just think, okay, I probably am. Hey, universe, send me information about how to do this differently, right? Like, I'm open to growing, I'm open to changing, and then see what starts showing up in your world and actually act on it. Because I mean, you can always go back to drinking, right? Like, this is not a like, I got on this road and I never could get off again. Like, you can just pick up the drinking anytime you want, right? Like, so, but can you put it down anytime you want? And that was the question that, that's what was plaguing me. I couldn't put it down anytime I wanted. And that isn't, in the grand scheme of things, okay for me, right? That is the definition of addiction. And I don't have to argue all the semantics and details of what everybody else thinks addiction is.
Yeah.
That, for me, if it's in control and I can't willingly just kind of like take it or leave it, then that's not okay for me.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. It's such an important message. It's not about how much, it's about, is it too much for you? That's it. And as Linda said, if you feel that, or if you're questioning, the likelihood is that it's something that should be looked at. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. So anything else that you want to share before we finish up today? Or
No, thank you. Thank you to you and your team. Really, it's life-changing. If you told me a few months ago that this is where I would be, I would have highly doubted it. So I'm really grateful.
Well, it's been a pleasure. It was a pleasure having you in the group and a pleasure talking to you today. And I wish you every success with the next stages of your business growth. And hope that you'll keep in touch with us. And for all the listeners out there, if you would like to learn more about the program, all the links that you need are in the text below this podcast. For now, this is Sarah Connolly for the Alcohol Free Podcast. Signing off. Thanks for joining us.